I'm going to unleash a zombie apocalypse on this world in the year 2012. Until then, I'll let humanity prepare as best they can. We'll see what progress they make and whether they can survive the zombie invasion. For this video, we're using a map of the real world with all the continents laid out. Then we head straight to what in our world would be the state of Florida, and that's where we drop in 2 humans who we're going to rename Adam and Eve. The second we hit play, you can already see the start of what'll be their very first campfire. Eve jumps right into gathering wood and food to make sure they survive the early days. Honestly, it all looks super organized, like each of them already knows exactly what they're supposed to do. Not long after, they had officially founded their kingdom, with Adam crowned as king, and before you know it, they've started having kids, something that's absolutely crucial if they want to expand fast before anything comes along that could wipe them out. To better represent this civilization, I decided to give their kingdom a more fitting name. As the years went by, the first upgrades to their tents began to appear, slowly turning them into proper cabins. Then, after about 40 years, we finally started seeing the first truly important advancements. First, I noticed they had changed their clothing, making it a bit more appropriate for the era they were in. They also built their very first mill, crucial for supplying food to the kingdom, along with a fishing boat and of course a port to go with it, although the port still looks pretty rustic at this stage. When it comes to territorial expansion, they haven't spread out much beyond their original capital. Still, they've built several new houses, which has allowed them to reach a population of 30. Something that really caught my attention though is that they still hadn't built a palace for the king, a structure that usually shows up early on. So yeah, that's pretty surprising. By the way, speaking of kings, here we've got King Adam, who's equipped with a powerful legendary wooden stick. Eve's pretty much the same when it comes to gear. During this time we've been watching, they finally managed to build their very first palace, a key milestone. This structure doesn't just symbolize authority, it also provides administration points for the kingdom, which could push their growth even further in the coming years. We're now in year 70, and I can finally see that they've started expanding their territory. They're sending settlers into new lands, and in doing so, discovering new regions. On top of that, they've developed concrete, which they're now using to reinforce their buildings and make them more durable. Makes me wonder how long it'll take them to occupy the entire world. We've just hit 150 years since the experiment began, and I had to stop right at this moment because it marks a turning point in history. Humanity has finally reached new lands. They've crossed the ocean and established themselves on the coast of Africa, founding a new village and quickly organizing to set up their very first intercontinental settlement. Meanwhile, over in the Americas, the entire continent has already been settled from north to south. By this point, humanity has reached a population of 1,700, along with countless upgrades to their buildings. Among these upgrades, one that really stands out is the construction of a training barracks, which will allow soldiers to prepare much more efficiently for future conflicts. And here we actually run into Eve, who, surprisingly, is still equipped with nothing but a simple wooden stick. By the way, I also gave both Eve and Adam the trait of immortality, so we can keep tracking their evolution throughout the entire video. As for other improvements, they've significantly upgraded their palace, thanks to the construction of several mines, where they're extracting key resources for their development. And here we also run into Adam, who's now much better equipped than before. He's wearing silver and steel armor, which is an excellent sign of the kingdom's military progress and preparation for war. These same advancements can be seen all across the northern part of the American continent. It's also clear that there's now an organized system of maritime trade. Ships are constantly going back and forth, showing a solid structure of trading routes. Before moving on, I decided to take one last look at the new settlement in Africa. There, I can already see they've built a mill, a palace, and are laying down roads to better organize the territory and make expansion easier. By the year 300, humanity has occupied almost the entire planet. Only a few regions remain unsettled, like parts of Russia, Asia, and Australia. In the capital, located in what would be the territory of the United States, the progress is especially striking. They've even reached the modern era, upgrading not only the palaces, but also several other buildings, and even constructing a few skyscrapers, marking an important milestone in their architectural and technological evolution, something we don't see happening quite as often in other continents. For example, in Africa. While there are 2 upgraded palaces there still aren't any modernized houses or buildings. The same goes for Europe and the Russian region, which is visibly underdeveloped. In fact, in this part of Asia, you can still spot simple tents, and honestly, that makes sense. After all, these are the last regions to be conquered, so it's it's only natural they'd need some extra time to catch up with the rest of the kingdom. By this point, humanity has surpassed the 7,000 inhabitant mark, with more than 4,100 of them being soldiers. An impressive figure, and one that represents a very high percentage of the population dedicated entirely to the military. That said, when it comes to equipment, while there's definitely an improvement compared to earlier stages, I can see some steel, swords, bows, and even halfway decent armor. There are still way too many people armed with nothing more than simple wooden sticks. And honestly, that's not going to cut it against what I've got planned for them. So to give them a bit of a fighting chance, I'm going to create an island and drop a monolith with a message hidden inside. If they manage to find it in time, they'll get a vague idea of what's coming in the year 2012. And that way, they can at least prepare themselves. We've reached year 600. By this point, the island with the monolith has curiously been occupied and settled by humans, which has led to a major improvement in their armies. While most of them are still using fairly primitive weapons, I've started spotting the occasional shotgun, and that's honestly pretty impressive. As for infrastructure development, we can see they've now fully occupied the Australian territory, which has turned into one of the most developed regions, with several buildings and even skyscrapers. At the same time, they've also made significant progress across the Asian region. Overall, in every territory, there's a clear improvement in this regard, except maybe in this southern part of Africa, where the density of modern buildings is lower, though you can still spot a few. A major issue came up. Over the last few centuries, something happened that turned Adam into an evil being, and on top of that, he was pretty furious, which is definitely not a good combination. This might eventually lead to his removal from power in the coming years if things don't get better. Finally, we've reached the year 2012, and when it comes to territorial expansion, there really wasn't much left to do. Humanity was using practically the entire map, except for a few spots like the United Kingdom and certain small countries in Asia that couldn't be settled, mainly because of their limited size. But aside from that, the entire world was already completely colonized. Humanity has now surpassed 15,500 inhabitants, with over 8,200 of them being soldiers. While this is a slightly smaller percentage than before, it's still an absolutely staggering number. When it comes to architectural progress, the kingdom is practically fully developed, except for a few areas in the northern region of America. But overall, the advances are solid, which is reflected in their massive population. On top of that, nearly all of their armies are equipped with firearms, so without a doubt, they're at their peak right now. Taking advantage of this situation, it's time to unleash the apocalypse. We're dropping hundreds and hundreds of zombies arriving on the shores of every continent. In total, over 4,000 zombies will attack, including some I've placed deep inside certain continents to spark chaos from within. So without further ado, we hit play and the invasions begin. Almost immediately, some zombies manage to make landfall, while others are held back by the constant fire from human soldiers. However, even though the humans are well armed and numerous, they can't contain the advance along every single coastline. This leads to regions like this part of Africa inevitably being overrun as zombies land and begin infecting the population. We can clearly see the green squares marking the infection hotspots, and some squads are already completely contaminated. In fact, I'd say that almost none of the original zombies I spawned are even left. Now, the real threat is the mass contagion, and whether or not the humans can withstand it. Interestingly, the zombies keep the weapons of the soldiers they once were, carrying swords and other military gear. And here we have Adam, who, unfortunately, has been infected. Even though he tried to fight back from the shadows, striking from his hiding place, he couldn't avoid the contagion. The situation is complete chaos. Soldiers patrol non-stop trying to contain the invasion, but it's simply impossible to deal with so many outbreaks at once. South America has become one of the hardest hit areas, while up north, entire towns are already completely abandoned. All signs point to Alaska being the next region to fall, wiped out entirely by the zombies, and northern Canada isn't spared either. It's already under zombie control. As the years went by, the human population dropped to fewer than 3,000, suffering devastating losses in every corner of the world. No region was safe. Many were left completely deserted, now occupied only by zombies patrolling the streets as the new rulers of the land. Even Australia was wiped entirely off the map. And so the years passed, and then the decades. Humanity tried to resist, to reorganize, to fight back. But inevitably, they kept losing more and more ground with each generation that came and went. Curiously, the ships were more active than ever, trying to relocate the few remaining civilians to safer zones. But it was useless. Every island was infested with zombies. Not even the animals were spared. It's been about a century since the zombie apocalypse began, and while some regions have managed to stay relatively safe, like this part of Asia, mainly China and India, where infection hotspots are barely noticeable, in other places like the United States and Canada, the situation is catastrophic. They're completely overrun and will probably be wiped out entirely. humanity is going through its darkest moment, with barely over 200 people left and having permanently lost their capital. That's where Adam's successor was, and even though he showed great strength and managed to take down several zombies, he was eventually infected and turned into one of them. Curiously, northern Canada seems to be free of zombies, possibly due to its geographic isolation, since the only land access is this small passage guarded day and night by a group of humans. And incredibly enough, the monolith island remains untouched, completely unaffected by the conflict. South America also remains one of the regions with the lowest zombie presence, although in the far south, there's still a tough battle being fought to wipe out the remaining hotspots. I let time pass until the year 2500, and the global situation is more or less the same as before, except for one key difference. Humans have managed to slightly increase their population despite the enormous difficulties. They've also succeeded in clearing out some key areas. For example, the United States and Canada region now shows a notable reduction in the number of zombies, largely thanks to this settlement right here, which constantly sends out missions to eradicate the undead. In Asia and Russia, humans have also expanded their territory considerably, which has helped stabilize their population and strengthen their presence. Everything suggests that, at least for now, humanity has managed to get the situation under control. That said, they can't let their guard down. A new outbreak could emerge at any moment. For now, at least, human territories appear to be safe, and it's clear they've managed to adapt, endure, and begin rebuilding after the zombie apocalypse.